This is interesting because there's not really an easy way to explain it to teams or to leaders, and there's no recipe that can help you to work through certain steps to choose a rich focus area. But there are a range of different things that you can think about, and there are also some good steps you can think through to question yourselves on whether you've chosen a rich topic. So, first of all, it's really important to think about the children who you are working with at this moment in time. So, who are those learners in front of you? Who is your team right now? That moment in time is really important to think about. And what learning has been sparking the children's thinking lately? What learning journeys have they been on? Maybe there's a clue in there about something that would be really interesting for a bigger inquiry or investigation. And it's also important to think about where you are. So think about the place that you're standing, what's happening around you in that location, or in the culture around you, or even in the place. There might be natural features or things around you that are really important to the place that you're working and living. So there are clues there as well. It also is sometimes about current events or the moment in history. What are the big issues in the world right now that we think are really important? And also, what are your priorities for children's learning in your place? So, what have your team talked about and your community come up with that are things that you think are really important for children to experience in the early years, and priorities for their learning? So, areas that you feel are non negotiable, that you really want to make sure that children have the opportunity to engage with as they grow up into citizens of the world. I think it's really important to develop a practice of questioning yourselves about how rich with potential your chosen focus area is. So, not shying away from questioning yourselves or challenging yourselves to articulate that at the beginning. If you have a sense that something is going to be a good focus area for an investigation or an inquiry, to be in that habit as a team of asking each other, what is the potential here, and how are many, many different children going to be able to engage with this or be interested, and thinking about perhaps all of the different ages at your centre or kindergarten, and yeah, just really thinking carefully, is this an area that's going to be rich with possibility for all of these children's learning? And in our setting, it's the education leadership team, which is around 5 or 6 people who are having these conversations at the beginning. And then we go to the wider team, and everyone has a chance to engage in this dialogue to refine our thinking. And that might look different depending on the size of your centre or your team and who is in what roles. But I think a really important point is that this is not a process for one person to have an idea and stay with that idea, that this concept or having a focus area that's going to be rich for a whole community of learners really takes lots of people's minds and dialogue and that kind of bouncing ideas back and forth to come up with something that's going to be really rich with learning. One example that comes to mind is an investigation that we did a few years ago that was focused on how children develop a sense of community. And it was an interesting moment in time because it was during or the later stage of the COVID pandemic, and some children had very little connection to their community in that time. Some children were really struggling to settle back into being in that busy centre environment, and also generally that the families and the teachers in our community had felt like they had been forced to disconnect in some ways and were finding their ways back to enjoying being engaged in community again. So it felt really important at that moment in time, and it also aligned very strongly with our strategic goals or our thinking about what we thought was really important for young children. We wanted children to feel a sense of connection to the place that they lived and to their cultural community, and for us to also feel connected to the families and the communities that were all joining into our centre. it's important when you bring a focus area to a team that there's an opportunity for everyone to really engage in the learning about that area before taking it to the children. So it's important to build up our understanding, think through the layers and complexity, and to start engaging in what the possibilities are in this area. And to do that, I think one thing is to think about your professional learning. So there might be areas that you need to do some more research in, or perhaps read a bit more about as a team. And also to reflect on what knowledge and strengths do we currently have amongst us. There are always things that everyone in the team can bring to that conversation. And a step that I find really powerful and important is to brainstorm and think about all of the possible ways that that investigation or inquiry could go, because that process as a team of trying to think really broadly about the possibilities helps us to keep an open mind as we set out with the children. Sometimes as adults, when we think of a focus area, we immediately jump to one idea that we have as the adult, and it can be really easy to get stuck on our own idea. So going through that process as a team of thinking really broadly and being challenged and surprised by other people's ideas and having documentation of that can just keep us open-minded and remind us of all the different possibilities to be keeping an eye out for. And I think that process of thinking broadly and then starting down a particular avenue with a group of children reminds us to listen really carefully to the children as we're setting out, because we know there are lots and lots of different possibilities here. And if we have that in mind, I think that we can be better listeners. Thank you.